Welcome to the first day of Home Economics 101. I wanted to take time to explain what canning is and also to explain about foodborne illnesses. I do see there's a lot of concern about canning and food poisoning. Many different foods can be preserved by canning. And that process is you putting your food in those jars and you're heating it to a specific time and temperature to kill the germs, and it deactivates the enzymes. That heat is going to kill those germs. To maintain food safety and quality, pressure canning, water bathing, and steam canning are three techniques for home canners. Using these techniques, the food is sealed in the jars and heated to a temperature that kills spoilage germs. When hot water bathing, always start your processing time at a point of a rolling boil. What is a rolling boil, you might ask? And what is the temperature? When the water in the pot hits 212 degrees Fahrenheit, you're at a rolling boil. At sea level, the rolling boil starts at that 212. If you're at a higher elevation, that temperature is marginally lower. For example, water has a boiling point of 203 degrees above 5,000 feet of sea level. When using the water canning technique to preserve your fruits or vegetables, it is essential to sterilize glass jars whenever the canning recipe calls for a processing time of less than 10 minutes. Without the requirement for early sterilization, the jars will be sterilized entirely if the water canning method requires processing for 10 minutes or more. Jars used in a pressure canner do not need to be sterilized. Additionally, this approach uses exceptionally high heat to sterilize the glass jars, negating that need for an initial sterilization. So that pressure is so high and that temperature is so high, it's going to sterilize the jars in the canner. You just need to make sure that they're washed and cleaned. I will say that someone did ask me to touch on reusing seals. I personally don't reuse seals, but I do know some people that do, that work, and it works perfect for them. I just have not got comfortable enough to the point where I would reuse seals. I'm not saying I'm opposed to it because you never know what times we'll be in where we might have to reuse a seal. I do remember there was a seal shortage. So I will say that you should put your seals and your rings in hot water for at least 10 minutes in extremely hot water, and that'll help soften up that seal and it'll make it more pliable to suction and get that jar sealed up. Next, I would like to talk about foodborne illness prevention. Your corn, your spinach, and your meat should be brought back to a rolling boil for 20 minutes and be covered before consumption. You should never eat canned goods directly out of the jar, not even for a taste test. You should always cook them first. All other home canned goods that are low acid should be boiled for 10 minutes before tasting. Any toxins present will be destroyed by the boiling. If it smells weird or if you think something is off, just throw it out. Tomatoes are a rare item that can cause botulism because of their acidity. I know that there are some low acid versions of tomatoes that they make, but even with that, if you're going to reheat it, it's going to kill that any type of botulism or any type of bacteria that's in it as long as you heat it up properly. Any canned or raw food that appears to be rotten should be thrown out. If you're going to chop up some chicken or cut up some beef that you're going to can, make sure that you're starting with good quality food, because the thing is, the botulism is not getting in the food while it's being canned. That botulism is getting in that jar if it's not properly cleaned, if it's not properly sterilized. The botulism and the C botulum spores happen before the canning process, not because of the canning process, okay? That botulism is already there, so you want to take measures to have that already taken care of. If you look at your jars and the lids are protruding, if they're swollen, if they're bulging, if it's frothy, if it's bubbling inside the jar, if it smells weird, if anything is all off, don't taste it and do not keep it. Just toss it. You should always check your lids. I do not store my jars with my rings on them because if I have a bad lid pop, I want to know that. So you'll definitely know if something goes bad if that ring is not on, because your lid will come off and it'll start to mold. It'll stink. You will know something is off. Adjust the altitude is necessary. From where I live here in Ohio, I pressure can my foods at 10 pounds of pressure. And I'm always checking my canner when I pressure can if I'm using my stove canner. to make sure that I'm staying between 10 and 11 pounds of pressure. Um, I don't know about anybody else, but when I pressure can my food, it teeters between 10 and 11, and I adjust my heat accordingly so that I don't go below that 10 pounds of pressure, because if I do that, I need to start my processing time over. So that's something that you can do for your homework. See what your altitude is. See where you are at elevation sea level wise for pressure canning your food. I also have an electric pressure canner. That one is a lot easier to use because you don't have to babysit it. And that's pretty much it for that portion. While you're using your canner on the stove, again, it is imperative to restart the process from the beginning if the canner drops below the desired level during the processing. So again, like I said, mine will teeter between 10 and 11 pounds of pressure, but if it drops below that 10, I start my processing time over. Those botulism spores can be killed by heating your food. Food processed by pressure canning reaches an internal temperature of 240 to 250 degrees Fahrenheit. A steam canner can reach up to 212 degrees Fahrenheit, so that food is internally that temperature. While your hot water bath canning, that canner can reach an internal temperature for those foods of 180 to 185. But that's before a rolling boil. Remember that rolling boil elevates it higher. Steam canners save time and energy when attaining this process because they are using minimal energy to get there, and they're not using a whole bunch of water, so they don't need a lot of force, so they can get to a higher temperature faster than hot water bathing. The botulism toxin is quite powerful. However, it can be destroyed. It affects food and beverages, and by heating them to an internal temperature of 185 Fahrenheit for at least 5 minutes, can destroy that toxin. And the botulism toxin may only be destroyed by boiling or heating your food. The poison is not destroyed by freezing your food. So I know a lot of people like to freeze their foods, which nothing is wrong with that. But you have to make sure you're reheating those foods up to 185 temperature, at least 185 temperature for 5 minutes or more. Okay. I know that they have some ready-made foods. Did you know that ready-made foods, because they're in those sealed containers with that low oxygen, are more susceptible to having botulism than a canned good, because canned goods are not ready-made meals. So if you can at all, avoid those ready-made meals. Next, I want to talk about the botulism incidence rate. I got a lot of this information from the CDC's website and other sources. The botulism incident rate in the United States, according to the CDC, only one botulism related foodborne illness case is deemed an outbreak, which that is crazy to me. So you mean to tell me one random case of botulism is considered an outbreak? In 2009, there were 121 cases of botulism. 11 of those were foodborne, 84 were from infants, 23 were from wounds, and 3 came from unknown causes. And then in 2011, there were 140 confirmed cases of botulism. 13 were from wounds, 102 were from infants, 5 from an unknown origin, and 20 were from foodborne illnesses. In 2013, that was 2013. Afterwards, 161 cases were confirmed, and 16 were suspected cases of botulism, food cases of botulism that were from the C. botulism causes, but fewer cases were from foodborne illnesses than salmonella. So that C. botulinum cases were fewer. Most of those cases of foodborne illnesses during that time period were from salmonella food poisoning. The CDC reports 215 botulism cases were reported in 2019. 14 were suspected cases. In the laboratory confirmed 201 of those cases. And basically 152 were in adults, 41 were in infants, and 21 were from wounds. 10% of those illnesses were from foodborne illnesses. So 10% of that 201 confirmed cases were from foodborne cases. And then less than 1% were like mysterious cases. I don't see any more documentation after 2019. I did look, I couldn't find anything else after 2019. I'm not sure if they stopped doing like case reports or they just stopped reporting it. I'm not sure why that stopped. I know COVID started then, and maybe that was just their primary focus at that point. You can eliminate these contaminants when you heat your canned food on a stove. You can roughly note that various pan temperatures for more exacting your home cooking. So low grilling and slow grilling in a slow cooker or a smoker means that your heat is going to be between 200 Fahrenheit and 300 Fahrenheit. For cooking poultry, veggies, omelets, pancakes, steaks, and other frying mediums, you're between 300 and 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And then 400 to 600 degrees Fahrenheit is considered high heat for searing your meat. So if there are any type of spores or contaminants that you cannot see outright because you cannot smell botulism or the spores, if there's anything there that you cannot see outright, cooking at those high temperatures are going to kill it, because remember, you only need 185-degree temperature to kill those toxins. I did do a little experiment that I'm going to post. I know there's so much controversy about hot water bathing your meats and your vegetables. I am one of those people that I have hot water bath my meats and hot water bath my vegetables, and my family was fine. I know that I did that because my husband's grandmother told me that that's how she would prepare her food. So that's initially how I started out before I started pressure canning. So I am going to post the results of that. And keep in mind, remember, you have to have 185-degree temperature when cooking your food to kill off those toxins. Have a great day.